You have to understand the time before the army, before the world changed. It was a different thing back then. The music was different. It came from a different place. It was raw. It was an accident, a happy, world-changing accident. Think about a small studio, not a fancy one. A place in Memphis, Sun Studio. Sam Phillips was the man in charge. He wasn't looking for a polished star, he was looking for a sound, something that felt real. He recorded blues artists, he recorded country artists, and one day, he found something in between. A young kid walked in, nervous, full of energy. He had a guitar. He brought 2 friends with him. A quiet guitar player named Scotty Moore, and a bass player, a guy who liked to clown around, named Bill Black. They weren't a band, not really. They were just 3 guys trying to make a record. They tried a ballad, it was okay, nothing special. Sam told them to take a break. During the break, the kid started goofing around. He grabbed his guitar and started playing an old blues song. But he played it fast, he sang it high, he slapped the side of his guitar. Bill Black picked up his big stand-up bass and started slapping it right back. Scotty Moore jumped in with these sharp, clean guitar licks. It was chaos. It was fun. It was alive. Sam Phillips heard it from the control room. He stuck his head out the door. "What was that?" he asked. They didn't know. They were just messing around. "Well, do it again," Sam said, "and I'll record it." That was the magic. That was the formula. There was no formula. It was pure lightning in a bottle. The music they made was simple. A guitar, bass, and a voice. Later they added a drummer, DJ Fontana. He didn't play fancy fills. He just kept the beat. He drove the train. He played what the song needed. Nothing more. Their sound was lean. It was aggressive, it was exciting, it was the sound of teenagers with nothing to lose. Scotty Moore's guitar wasn't just background noise, it was a second voice. It answered the singer. It pushed him. Bill Black's bass wasn't just a low rumble, it was a rhythm instrument. That slapping sound was as important as the drums. They were a real band. They played off each other. They listened to each other. When they were on stage, it was an explosion. When they were in the studio, they tried to capture that same energy. They would do take after take, not to get it perfect, but to get it right, to find that one take where everything clicked. Where the energy was at its peak. The songs were about rebellion, about love, about dancing. Heartbreak Hotel was dark and bluesy. Hound Dog was pure, angry noise. Jailhouse Rock was a tightly wound spring of power. These songs were dangerous. Parents hated them. Kids loved them. The music was a force of nature. It felt like it could change the world. And it did. The singer, of course, became the biggest star on the planet. His face was everywhere. His voice was everywhere. But behind that voice was the sound of that band. That simple, powerful, 3 or 4-piece rock and roll machine. They had created a language together. A language of raw emotion and driving rhythm. It was their sound. And it felt like it would last forever. But nothing lasts forever. Then came the army. 2 years. He was gone. The biggest star in the world had to get a haircut, put on a uniform, and become a regular guy. For 2 whole years, he was out of the public eye. He was in Germany driving a Jeep. He wasn't making movies, he wasn't touring, and most importantly, he wasn't recording. His manager, a shrewd man named Colonel Tom Parker, made sure he wasn't forgotten. He had a stockpile of songs that had been recorded before the singer left. He released them slowly. A single here, a single there. It kept the flame alive, it kept the money coming in. But it was a holding pattern. While he was gone, the world he helped create kept moving. It changed. Rock and roll, that raw and dangerous music, started to soften. The wild energy of the early days was fading. Other artists had died in a plane crash. Another had gone to jail. Another had quit rock and roll for the church. The first wave was over. In its place came a new sound, a cleaner sound. Teen idols were the new thing. Boys with nice hair and friendly smiles, they sang songs that were safe. The music was produced in big city studios with string sections and backing vocalists. It was polished, professional, it wasn't dangerous anymore. The kid in the army was changing too. He was growing up. He wasn't a teenager anymore, he was a man in his mid-20s. His mother had passed away while he was in basic training, a devastating blow. He was more serious, more mature. He was also surrounded by new influences, listening to different kinds of music. He was no longer that wild kid from Memphis. The colonel had a plan. He always had a plan. The return from the army had to be a huge event. It couldn't just be a quiet comeback. It had to be a relaunch. The goal wasn't just to get the old fans back. The goal was to get new fans, and older fans, the kind of people who watched primetime television, the kind of people who bought albums, not just singles. The plan was to turn the rock and roll rebel into an all-around entertainer, a family-friendly superstar. The first step was a massive television special. He wouldn't be sharing the stage with other rockers. He would be sharing it with Frank Sinatra. The message was clear. This was the new him. He was no longer a threat. He was mainstream. But before the TV special, there was an even more urgent task. He needed a new single. The first new song in 2 years. The pressure was immense. The whole world was waiting to see if he still had it. Could he still deliver a hit? Did his voice still have the magic? Would he come back with another earth-shaking rock and roll song? Or would he come back with something different? The recording session was booked in Nashville, RCA Studio B. This wasn't Sun Studio, this was a state-of-the-art facility. The home of the Nashville sound. It was a place where hits were manufactured with precision. The musicians who worked there were the best in the business. They were called the A-Team. They could play anything, any style. You put a piece of sheet music in front of them, and they would play it perfectly on the first take. His old band was there, Scotty Moore on guitar, DJ Fontana on drums. It was a reunion. But it felt different. They weren't the only ones in the room. The studio was filled with these Nashville session pros. Floyd Kramer was on piano, Bob Moore, no relation to Scotty, was on bass, Bill Black had quit the band years ago, tired of the low pay and lack of recognition. There was even another drummer, Buddy Harman, sitting right next to DJ 2. The atmosphere wasn't loose and fun like the old days. It was serious. It was a business meeting. Executives from the record label were there. The Colonel was there, watching everything. The pressure in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. This session had to produce a #1 hit. Failure was not an option. They started working. They tried a few songs, and then they got to the one. The song that was chosen to be the big comeback single. It was a strange song. It didn't rock. It didn't swing. It had a weird jerky rhythm. It would stop and start. The beat was a kind of cha-cha. It was a pop song. A novelty song, almost. It had a catchy hook, for sure. A little ooh-ha-ha part that was designed to get stuck in your head. But it had no soul. No grit. No danger. Scotty Moore picked up his guitar. He didn't know what to play. His style was built on blues and country licks. Fast, aggressive, melodic runs that danced around the vocal. The song didn't have room for that. The rhythm was so rigid, so unnatural. He tried to find a way in. He tried to put a signature on it, but it was like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. The song fought him at every turn. It felt stiff. It felt silly. This wasn't the music that had changed his life. This was something else entirely. It was manufactured pop. DJ Fontana sat behind his drum kit, confused. He was a rock and roll drummer. He played with a backbeat that you could feel in your chest. This cha-cha rhythm was foreign to him. He had to share the drumming duties with Buddy Harman, the Nashville pro. They had to work out this clunky stop-start pattern together. It felt mechanical. There was no room for improvisation, no room for feel. He was just a cog in the machine, playing a pre-written part. The joy was gone. The spontaneity that defined their early work was nowhere to be found. For the Nashville A-Team, this was just another day at the office. They were professionals. They saw the chart, they played the notes, they didn't question the arrangement. Their job was to execute it flawlessly. Floyd Kramer played his signature slipnote piano style. Bob Moore laid down a solid, predictable bass line. Buddy Harman played the pattern perfectly. They were building the song exactly as the producers wanted it. Clean, polished. It's commercial. The singer stood in the middle of it all. He was the boss. He was the star. But he was also a soldier following orders. He knew what was at stake. He knew he needed a hit. He worked on the song for hours, take after take. He tried to inject some of his old energy into it. He sang with power. He put his charisma into every line. He was a professional, and he was determined to make it work. But his old bandmates watched him, and something felt wrong. They were no longer a creative unit, bouncing ideas off each other. They were just session musicians playing parts they didn't like on a song they didn't believe in. The magic connection they once had was gone, replaced by the cold, hard reality of the music business. They were making a product, not art. They spent hours on that one song, over and over again. Trying to get the weird timing right. Trying to make it sound effortless when it felt completely forced. For Scotty and DJ, it was torture. It was a betrayal of everything they had built. This wasn't the sound that had conquered the world. This was a safe, calculated imitation. It was the sound of compromise. Finally, after dozens of takes, the producers got what they wanted. A perfect, clean, catchy pop record. Everyone in the control room was smiling. The executives were thrilled. The Colonel was pleased. They knew they had a hit on their hands. It was exactly what they wanted. It was friendly, it was catchy, it would sell millions. But the band felt sick. Scotty Moore hated it. He thought it was one of the worst songs they had ever recorded. It had no fire, it had no heart, it was a novelty tune. He felt embarrassed by it. The DJ Fontana felt the same way. It was a long way from Jailhouse Rock. This was the sound of his friend, his boss, being turned into something he wasn't. The single was rushed to the pressing plant. It hit the radio stations just days later, and it was a monster. It flew up the charts. It went straight to number one. It was one of the fastest selling singles of his career. The success proved the Colonel was right. His strategy had worked perfectly. The public didn't want the old, dangerous rebel. They wanted this new, polished, all-around entertainer. The song was the perfect vehicle for his reintroduction. It was safe enough for parents. It was catchy enough for kids. It was a commercial grand slam. For the band, the success was bittersweet. It meant more work, more money, but it also meant that the song they hated was the new blueprint. This was the direction they were heading in. The days of raw, three-chord rock and roll were over. The future was polished pop, movie soundtracks, and songs written by professional hitmakers in New York and Los Angeles. This one recording session drew a line in the sand. On one side was the past, the spontaneous, energetic, groundbreaking music they had made at Sun and in the early days at RCA. On the other side was the future, a carefully managed career of safe commercial pop music. Scotty Moore and DJ Fontana would continue to play with him for years, both on stage and in the studio. But they were never really a band again, in the same way. They became part of a larger machine. They were hired hands, playing the parts they were told to play. The creative spark, the feeling that they were all in it together, creating something new and exciting, was gone. It had died in that Nashville studio, during the endless takes of a song with a jerky, stop-start rhythm that they just couldn't stand. It was the price of staying on top. The rebel had become the king, and the king had to please the entire kingdom. He could no longer just make music for the kids in the back row, he had to make music for everyone. The song was a massive hit, a triumphant return, but for the men who had been there from the beginning, it was the sound of the end of an era. It was the sound of something special being lost forever, replaced by something successful, something professional, but something hollow. And the band knew, from that day forward, that things would never be the same. They were right. The song was Stuck on You.